So you're all very welcome to Dirty Salad Club. I see some familiar faces here this morning. For anybody who's new here for the first time, Dirty Salad Club is a community of coaches, of psychologists, HR professionals, L&D professionals, facilitators, trainers. And it's a space for us to get together, to talk, to share learnings with each other, to share behavioral insights, information on psychometric assessments, anything that's going to help us in our practice as we work with people. For anybody who hasn't joined the group yet, if it's your first time here, you can find us on LinkedIn. If you search for Dirty Salad Club on LinkedIn, you'll find and you'll be able to join the group. Or you can pop us an email at info@kinchlions.ie, or you can follow us on Eventbrite to hear of all the Dirty Salad Club happenings. We meet once a month, usually on the third Wednesday of every month at 11 o'clock for 45 minutes or so. This morning we have hosting this morning's session is our very own Niamh Gaffney. We at Kinch Lions are very lucky to have Niamh as a member of our team. Niamh is an executive coach, a medical coach and a facilitator, as well as a master trainer and practitioner in the raw assessment of well-being and resilience in the workplace. So no better woman absolutely to bring us through all of this. So we're really looking forward to having Niamh with us this morning. So without further ado, Niamh, I'll let you take it from here.
Thanks, Tanya. And let me just kick things up. I'm moving the big screen so I can get to see everybody's faces. What I would love, if that's okay, and I think anybody who has worked with me before will really understand it and expect this of me, I would love to see your faces if you can. So if you feel brave enough, please turn on the camera. I appreciate if you're driving and listening to this, don't turn on the camera, but if you can at all, I'd love to see your faces. Like Tanya said, I've worked with Kinch Lions now for a good while. I'm delighted to be part of this. I see a few names that I don't recognize and quite a few names that I do. So I'm looking forward to meeting each of you in turn as we go through this. So today's session really, and those of you who are, I suppose, lucky enough to be coming in a little bit later than 11 o'clock, you avoided a potential earworm. I think poor Billy there got the brunt of it when he joined in and we were singing along to Chumbawamba. I can share the files with you if you really need it, but talk about blasting us back to the past. It was, yeah, it's one of those. But anyway, today's session really, I suppose, a little bit differently to what we spend a lot of time working on, a lot of information sharing, but actually today I really wanted us to take time just to reflect and to use the time. So it would be a little bit different to maybe our normal run of things. It's really interesting that we're doing this just ahead of what will potentially be known as our Freedom Day here in Ireland. I'm conscious that there's some people dialing in from lots of different countries, but here in Ireland on the 22nd, we will start to open the nightclubs again. For those of you who go into nightclubs and things, not my cup of tea at the minute. But anyway, but what was really interesting, I'm having loads of conversations with people recently, and it's like we're back in the meeting rooms, back in one-to-one training and face-to-face training and things like that. And I've got a lot of people saying, it's like we learned nothing. You know, we're stuck in traffic. We're really kind of getting into the long hours of commuting. There's the sickness, the frustration, the snappiness with each other. And I'm hearing that a lot. It's like we learned nothing, or what I wouldn't give for a little lockdown. And it's so I really want us to take today's time, and almost like a gift to yourself, and learn, and just learn from what you've experienced, and use that experience to help you do what it is you want to do as you go forward. I chose the name with intention, because a bounce is, if you bounce a ball, it kind of tends to go anywhere. But what I would like us to do is to kind of put a little bit of direction behind that, to choose ourselves where we want to bounce towards. And we can really do that when we reflect and when we look at where we have been and what we've gone through. Now, before we get into it, we will be doing breakouts today. I'm conscious that we're bringing more than just our professional selves into today's session. So if you would rather not bring any of that content into those sessions, that's no problem. If it doesn't suit you to join a breakout group today, that's no problem. I would invite you to kind of work along with it with a pen and paper yourself anyway. But if you would rather not be included in the breakout rooms, will you send Tanya a note privately, or put your hand up on the screen, and she can exclude you from the breakouts that we will be going through. Because there is scope and there's a place for us to discuss private things, if you choose to and if you feel brave enough to, please let's just agree collectively then that this is private, that nothing will be shared outside those breakout rooms in this plenary group. So we'll be moving directly from the breakout rooms into the next point. So please do use that information to challenge yourselves a little bit, to be a little bit braver than you might normally like to be. And actually just treat yourself with a little bit of kindness, the kindness that you usually show everybody else. And above all, have a little bit of fun with this. It's not school. We're just here to kind of have to take a little bit of learning from what we've experienced. Any questions before we get started? Okay. So anyone who has worked with me before will recognize this question, but on a scale of 1 to 7, how engaged do you plan on being in this session? You may not have the capacity to be full 7. That's okay. We all have loads on. But can you be as 5 as you're going to be if 5 is the rate that you're picked? And if there is something that you can do to help you meet that level of engagement, take a second now to go and do it. So that might be locking the door, grabbing yourself a cup of water or a glass of water, or kind of turning your phone on silent, whatever it is you want to do, just make that intentional. This itself is a really, really great exercise to use whenever you need to, because it focuses you and it forces you to actively choose. And there was a reason behind choosing a scale of 1 to 7, because we tend to do 1 to 10, and we tend to use the same number as we always use. So if you can choose, shake up the scale a little bit, it forces you to actually be present right here, right now. And that's all we ever have. So choose how you want to show up today. Okay. I'd like you to, if you can, turn on your cameras and join with us. But we often talk about what resilience is. We have a good sense of what it is. But I would like us to look at this slightly differently today. How has your definition of resilience changed since you've experienced a global pandemic? Would anyone like to unmute yourselves and jump on and share how your definition of resilience has changed since you've experienced what you've experienced?
Niamh.
Yeah,
hi, I'll jump in. Yeah, I think the experience of it, I'm far more aware of what is good for me, what's not, what causes stress, and just aware of that bounce back and the need to bounce back. So I think the awareness has been lifted a whole lot going through the pandemic and really experiencing it at that personal level, maybe more so. So the awareness has definitely been heightened around the impact and the need to bounce back. Yeah.
I love it. Anyone else have a different perspective? Carolyn, hi.
Hi, pardon me. I think for me, the whole self-compassion piece is much stronger now in this idea of resilience. I think I've realized, and I see other people realizing, that we need to be kinder with ourselves if we want to go long-term and if we really want to keep serving.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Self-care, self-compassion.
Perfect. And that's a kind of a new awareness, or the importance of that is new, it has heightened since
it's heightened, and also it's become no longer empty words. It's really about practice. You get down on your mat, you go for your walk, whatever it is, it becomes real, not just something in a book or in an article.
I love that. I love that. Anybody else like to share? Billy.
Yeah, no, just I've been reflecting on it recently that prior pandemic, looking at resilience, there was always kind of an end in sight, so it was resilience to get through the next whatever. I think what the pandemic has, made us realize that some days we need a longer term resilience, you know, that there isn't an end in sight, and it's a much longer term. And that's something we can bring back for some people, you know, like daily work can be a struggle. You know, there can be an ongoing. So it's just like, so developing new coping mechanisms for when there isn't an end in sight, and that ongoing resilience to deal with the day-to-day, rather than just, well, resilience to get over the next hump and I'll be okay by next week, you know. So that's just reflecting on that myself recently.
Yeah, I love that, Billy. And actually that leads me on to what I wanted to kind of share an awareness with is this. What I'm taking this from, and we'll talk a little bit more in the next line, I'm taking this from the raw, as Tanya mentioned, we use a psychometric for workplace resilience and well-being, but this is one of the really useful things that we talk about there, because resilience isn't actually a destination, as you were saying, Billy. It's a feeling, as you were saying, Caroline, it's a sense of where am I right now and what do I need? I'd like you, if you can, to plot out where can you see, let me rephrase that. Looking at this resilience as a continuum, and it's a continuum that we're all on at various points in various places during different experiences. Can you notice where you have been? Perhaps where you are now, perhaps where you'd like to be. The reason why I think this is important to take time and start to notice where am I right now is we don't ever really notice when you're in the middle of something difficult. And ironically, it was this time last year, I found myself right in the middle of this cognitive, I'm pointing the screen at the wrong screen. I'm right in the middle of this section here, and I had no idea. I wasn't able to, you know, to put the slides of a presentation together. I could not think straight. And I was beating myself up for that. I was like, what in God's name is wrong with you, Niamh, the way you're just not able to do it? As it turned out, I had COVID. Surprise, surprise. But it was only after I got the diagnosis, after somebody said something isn't right here, that I realized that I was here on the scale. And I was putting pressure on myself to be, you know, to kind of push through it. But the thing was, I wasn't able to recognize that I was there. So now that we've moved through a situation, or we're moving through, it can be really useful to take a moment and plot out what it looks like when you're under stress, what it looks like when you're in a difficult place, so that you can recognize the flags that come up. Because oftentimes the stresses and strains that we are, you know, subject to are so insidious. We don't realize what we're carrying, what we're dealing with, until it has passed. And so sometimes, like today's session, taking time just to notice where you've been, where you can be, and what it looks like and feels like for you at each of those various stages can be a really useful thing to do. Because resilience isn't just, I will feel better when this happens. It's not about that. It's about taking stock of where I am right now. What do I need to move myself from this position to one step to the better? I can't get my mouse back now. Bear me a second. As we're doing this, I'd like you to jot down any thoughts that are coming to your head, because each of these experiences are so deeply personal. That it doesn't have any meaning outside of the meaning that you put in it. So if something is coming to mind as you're listening here, as you're, you know, talking with each other in breakouts, please make use of that pen and paper that you have beside yourself and not down, because if you can do that, it is about joining together all of those little breadcrumbs to kind of take and learn from it yourself in the best way that works for you. So as I mentioned before, I'm going to use the framework of the raw psychometric to kind of help us work through this. And I love this for a definition of resilience. It is essentially having enough of a cushion between you and the stuff that life throws at us. And that stuff, those arrows, those darts, some are really dangerous, some are really light. Sometimes it can be death by 1,000 cuts, and we all know what that feels like. But the more cushion you have between them and you, the better able you are to to continue to do all that you need to do. And the way this framework is used is quite simple. There's simply 5 pillars. And what I'm hoping to do today is to give you 5 questions or 5 opportunities to kind of flex how you have experienced things, how you're looking at that, so that you can choose how to build up each one of these to give yourself the cushioning you need. But because we're looking at it today from a reflective place, we're going to use the experiences that you've been through just to kind of take whatever learnings that are important to you. I should have said at the start, but I'll say it here now, it comes to mind. If something really difficult or tangible comes up that you would like additional help with, please come connect with me afterwards. I have no problem in staying on later or kind of connecting with you separately to this to work through anything that comes up. And please do mind yourself as we're going through this, because I'm conscious that everybody's experience has been very, very different with this. So as I just while I'm here, also for those of you who are working in organizations or who are working in this a lot in this space, there's also a raw report out which gives lots of different information about variances between different groups, different kind of levels of seniority, and also it's got quite insightful information about pre and post COVID experiences, some resilience and wellbeing. So if you would like that, connect with me afterwards and I can send that out to you. So let me stop talking and put it back in your shoes. For anybody who is willing to or would like to go into a breakout room, Tanya will put you into a room. If not, and if you can, grab a pen and paper and do this privately yourself. You can turn off the camera and just take a few minutes to reflect on this yourself. What is your COVID story? If you had told me 2 years ago that this was going to happen, I'd never have believed you. What is the story that comes to mind? What is the story that you share when you're talking about your COVID experience? If you want to take about 5 minutes, we'll go into the breakout room and just share that. If you're doing this privately yourself, just write down, just brain dump your experiences. And it's more about just sharing and being aware of it. There are a few people, Tanya, who aren't able to see the messages come in. But please do, if you can, do this privately as you're doing with a pen and paper. It can be equally as powerful. Okay, we'll open the breakout rooms. And for anybody else, if you want to take yourself off camera and just spend the 5 minutes writing out what your COVID story is.
Okay, these rooms will open in just a second, folks. I think I've taken account of everybody who would like to do this as an individual piece and not join the breakout rooms. If there's anybody I've forgotten there and has an invitation to join a breakout room, that's okay. You don't have to join.
Welcome back, everybody. I'm going to move straight into the next point, but bear in mind those conversations. We'll be coming back to them in a little while. Right now, I'd like you to, if you can, if you're in the comfort of your own home or your own office, kick off your shoes, ground yourself, put your feet flat on the floor. If you're in a public space, don't do this, or at least don't do it, obviously. The thing about this energy pillar, which is the first of the 5 pillars we're talking about, this is stuff we all know. We all know exactly what we need right now, but we're often so busy to take the time to actually even just sit and contemplate. So what I would invite you to do is just stop for 60 seconds. We just have silence. Close your eyes and turn off the camera if you prefer. Just have a think. What do I need right now? All of your experiences have brought you to this very moment. What do you need? What have you learned? What do you need? What must you stop doing that you're spending too much time at? What must you start doing that you're not doing enough of? Now, if you've had any great insights or wonderful, take a minute just to jot those down, because the last thing I want is for you to leave this session and go off and with your busy lives and totally forget the fact that you just committed that you would go for a walk, right? At lunchtime or whatever it was that you decided you were going to do. Because that's the trap we all fall into, and it's a really useful one to hear. But this little question, what do I need right now, can be exactly the thing that you need to boost your resilience. And if remember, resilience isn't about getting to a state where everything is perfect and there's sparkles and unicorns. It is about getting one step to the better to help me get through whatever I'm dealing right now. The next pillar, as it is future focus. And the idea of this is having something that's really important or something that really focuses your attention and helps you move towards the future, towards a future goal. And it's really invokes that sense of personal control, or something that I can do. But all of the experiences that you have had have given you huge amount of insight as to what really, really matters to you. In all of the work that I've been doing recently, there's like a number of themes that come up. People have got such a deep sense of what really matters to them. When we get busy and when we started this kind of the great return, everything is so busy that we lose sight of that again. And that's where you get comments like, God, what I wouldn't give for just a touch of a lockdown, that kind of a thing. So if you'd like to share, unmute yourselves and please share, but also in the chat, what really matters? What's so important now in your life that you really want to keep forward of mind and kind of work towards? Would anyone like to share in the group? Please share in the chat as well. But also flesh this out in your own notes as you, if you wish. What's the one word that comes to mind about what really matters to you? Family and self-care. Balance. Family and self-care. Okay. Anyone like to share in the session, in the group? If you don't, that's perfectly fine. That's not, I don't want to put pressure on anyone. But let me ask this question a different way. Does everyone have a real strong sense of what really matters to you? If you can make a note of that. It doesn't matter if it's one particular thing, it might be 2 or 3 things that are equally important.
Hi, Niamh.
Hi, Gwen.
it's building on the conversation, a really nice conversation I had with Carolyn and Kieran, but it was, for me, I think it's place, both the literal and the kind of psychological place of where am I now. But there's lots of opportunities, but also just knowing where am I placing myself.
Okay. And so there's a real consciousness, a real intention behind that. I really like that. I haven't come across that, Gwen, in all my conversations. So the star for you for giving me something original. Thank you. That's really good. Okay. We'll move on to the next one. And we'll go back into the breakout rooms in a moment, or back into your reflective place if you're doing this individually. Especially in this country, we have such a skill for focusing on the dramatics of an experience, or of all that went wrong. We know how to tell a good story, but we also know how to tell a good story up here too. We tend to be really, really hard on yourself by nature. So we're Teflon for the good stuff, and like Velcro for any of the negative things. And look, there's a value for that. It keeps us safe. It helps us avoid danger and stuff. But we really do need to be careful in how we just allow that to happen unconsciously, especially when the experience is something that we may have a tendency to ruminate on. So if it's something that was particularly difficult, a particularly emotional experience, or particularly difficult to move on from, you might find yourself going back there over and over. And if you think about that resilience piece right at the start, what you're doing is you're unconsciously allowing in more and more of those darts to happen over and over again. So what we're looking about here is looking at how, consciously focusing our attention on the wins, on the things we've learned, on the skills we've strengthened, perhaps as a result of that difficult experience. So what I'd like you to do is to go back into the breakout rooms, reflect on your COVID story, the one that you shared. And if you did write out your story, just take a minute to notice the language that you're using is particularly hard language, is particularly self-critical language. Were you talking about successes in your COVID story earlier on, like things that improved, or did you go straight in for the woe and the dramatics about it? Did you talk about what you had gained, or did you talk about what you had lost? Just what were the focus of the words? I'd like you to go right back into the same sessions with the same people, and feel free, to totally challenge each other to kind of keep the language, have a positive nature, but to use the question, what am I learning? Or what successes have I had? What skills have I strengthened to retell that COVID story, or to kind of to reaffirm for yourself what you have learned from your experiences? We can open the breakout rooms, Tanya.
Okay, they're open now. So anyone who's joining, you should see your invite on screen. Anyone who's not joining Niamh, same like last time, that they might use this time for reflection for themselves. Okay.
So if you have spent the previous time writing out about your COVID story, have a look at the language you used in that writing, particularly when we're writing things down, we might tend not to censor ourselves as much. So you might get a better insight for how self-critical or for how stuck you are in a situation. And if that's the case, try to consciously retell the story so that you're doing it from a sense of a place of growth and resilience, rather than potentially being stuck in that victim place. Gina, thank you for sharing that. I think that's incredible. I was like, what a fantastic learning to bring. I don't know, I know you're not feeling particularly well, so you might want to come on camera, but if you'd like to tell us a little bit more about that, that learning that you're particularly taking from the whole COVID experience.
Yes. It was exciting because at first, the first 8 months of COVID, was extremely hard because I'm an extrovert, so I love being around people. And then to turn around and take that opportunity to find something positive in the experience. So I took different classes and I was really surprised that I said, you know, one thing I can do to help my mental health, physical health, is to motivate myself to become an instructor, to help others to stay focused mentally during these challenging times. And of course, to improve my profession. So I took different workshops and webinars to improve in my skills and also to improve in communication.
Perfect. Well, thank you for sharing that. We'll move on. We'll move on to the next pillar, which is flexible thinking. Now, you've already started to do this. Flexible thinking is about having that sense that there's always a different way to look at something. And in that is an opportunity to approach something from a different perspective, to learn something new about yourself, but actually to stretch yourself and to grow and to kind of push back the boundaries of that comfort zone that, if we're not careful, can actually imprison us. If we continue to do things the way we've always done them, well, then we're likely to get, we make our comfort zone smaller and smaller. So with kindness and self-compassion, and with all of the learnings you just reflected on, I'd like you to actively think about your worst experience from the last 2 years. Please mind yourself. And again, if you need further help with this, come to me after the session, absolutely. But you've had a very difficult experience and you've survived it. You're here today having experienced it. Perhaps you're still in the midst of it. Perhaps things are still going on, but you have survived your worst day. It's your choice to choose whether to focus on the experience or on the survival aspect. So I'm going to give you 3 minutes now to write out your 3 top tips that would help someone else survive a similar experience. What do they need to be aware of? Let me set the timer because this is something I always forget. What do they need to be aware of? How can they mind themselves as they go through it? What helped you move through the experience that would be really worthwhile sharing? What are you grateful for having come through it? What was the silver lining? What was the thing you couldn't have known? You couldn't have experienced other than having gone through this difficult and challenging experience? Take a minute with that. I'll do another 30 seconds on that. Now, We'll move on to the next one, but I might invite some of you to share any of your experiences or your learnings about yourself from having answered or attempted to answer these questions as we went through today's session in a moment. The next one is strong relationships. This was the one thing we all noticed how much we missed when we were in the midst of the lockdown. We craved connection. And in fact, now when we're kind of forced, we're moving back into working face-to-face with each other, it's kind of probably feel a little bit awkward about it. It's like, oh, what? I have to go and talk to people face-to-face. What do you talk about over a real coffee? All of these kind of experiences that are coming up. So I want to stop sharing. Let me just stop sharing here for a second. Because what I would like us to do is to invite you all to put your screen on gallery view and turn on your camera. Hello, everybody. Lovely to see your faces. We're part of a club here. This club is something that we belong to. We belong to the human race, but we belong specifically to the Dirty Salad Club. You're connected to this club. So I'd like you just for a second to notice the people who are also here with you. Step into who you really want to be. So this version of you that is the version that you want to be, I'd like you to step into that and just connect silently with everyone else here in the room, smiling, eye contact, noticing who's there. Notice your own picture, your own image as well, because maybe that's the image we don't pay enough attention to. Just connect with them from the heart. Feel gratitude for yourself that you've just been through one of the most unsettling, most unprecedented experiences of the generation, of a couple of generations. This is totally awkward. I know, I get it. That's okay, but just bear with me. I'd just like you to make a conscious intention to connect with one other person perhaps that you don't know. Maybe connect with them offline or on LinkedIn, just to say hi. Would anyone like to share how that experience is for you? Does it feel really weird looking at people like with intention? It does for me, I'll give you that. I chat to people a lot of time on this, and then when I have to go silent and kind of go, ooh, hi, it's like, oh, I hate doing this. But we do this naturally when we're face to face with each other. How do you feel about that?
Niamh, I have to say, I found it really nice because it's not often in anything like this, in any webinars, training sessions, anything online, that you focus on, specifically when you're not in a breakout room, when you're in the main session, that you focus on the other people who are there with you. Whereas, as we say, if we were in person in a room together, maybe we'd be going for coffee afterwards or beforehand, or you'd be walking back to the car park together, whatever it might be. There's an opportunity to do that that's been missing in a lot of online training. So I found it quite nice.
Thank you.
I can echo that. I liked it too. Yeah.
Oh,
and
I saw Karen, sorry, I couldn't see who was talking there.
Sorry, yeah. I liked it too, and it's not so weird for me anymore because I think we've been doing this now for 18 months in different webinars and trainings that I've followed. And I think you invited us into community, you invited us into belonging and shared purpose. So I actually quite liked it. Thank you.
Okay. So let me just share my screen again. We'll just wrap up. And I apologize to people who had to leave a little bit earlier. I took a little bit over time, and I apologize for that. I am known for that. It's one of the things I'm working on. But what I really just want to leave you with is just these questions, which might be helpful for you. If there's any particular, this mightn't be your language, so feel free to reframe this and change it into a language that actually does support you, that is in your own language. But these are great questions to kind of bring you right back into the moment and to really flesh out each one of those pillars. You might find that there's one over the others that works for you. Particularly this one, how else can I see it, is the one that I use all the time. And the more you practice this, the more likely you are to be able to call on it in a moment which really does need your help, or which really does need your, additional resilience, I mean. And Sinead, as we say here, very in-depth but light touch today. Again, I invite anybody to connect with me afterwards if we're not on LinkedIn, if we're not connected already. But also, if there's anything that today's session has brought up for you, please do let me know. I'd be more than happy to help you walk through that. Tanya, I'll leave it over to you just to explain the next session.
Yeah, absolutely. So next month in November, on the 24th of November, we have the lovely Becca Brighty, psychologist based in the UK, of Brighty People, who'll be with us. And she's going to be talking about the neuroscience of organizational change, specifically how we can minimize our brain's threat response to change. So it's going to be a super session, 24th of November, with Becca Brighty at 11 o'clock. And just a reminder again, we're always keen and interested to hear from any of you members who might like to host a session. So if anybody would like to, if you have any ideas for topics you'd like to host yourself, or maybe even topics that you might like to see covered by somebody else, please do feel free, pop us an email or a message on the Dirty Salad Club group on LinkedIn. Thanks so much, Niamh, for this morning. I think it was it was great. It was lovely. It was different. And those 5 questions are fantastic. A great little takeaway, I think, to have 5 short, succinct questions, but that can allow for so much learning and reflection. So thank you, Niamh. Thank you to everybody for your time. And look, we'll see you on LinkedIn, and we'll see you next month as well, hopefully. All the best for now. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you. Bye. Take care, and thanks for your time. I appreciate it.